Say cheese, Habiba. It's different.
It's ginger.
She's actually, it's smiling, look.
Wants to be with me, can I have it?
That's how deadly smart.
When we arrived early morning, the temperature was already hitting 40 degrees. Mrs. Brown began to feel the heat, just a wee bit too much, and decided to retire to the air-conditioned minibus that was exclusively ours for the long day ahead. An avenue of battered sphinxes leads to the awe-inspiring main entrance, heralding the Temple of Karnak. The Karnak temples was the most important place of worship in all of Egypt. Back when Luxor was Egypt's capital, this sprawling complex of temples was dedicated to the grandiose Holy Family, a trinity of gods, Amen, Mut and Khonsru. It was built over many centuries throughout this New Kingdom period when most of the great and famous kings ruled, between 3,000 and 5,000 years ago. The great hypostyle hall with over 100 columns is one of the grandest religious structures ever built. Its many columns represent papyrus plants, bulging stems and flowering peaks, each elaborately carved and once brightly painted. I could not escape the sheer perfection of Karnak's architectural aesthetics. Hieroglyphics carved into granite as if they were done only yesterday, mind-blowing, and not difficult to imagine what it must have looked like many millennia ago. Anyway, for all you conspiracy theorists who believe that the pyramids and the temples were built by aliens, here's the reason why that is an absolute nonsense. It was mud slides they built up level by level to bring the bricks up by ropes and sleighs. And that's the remnants of the mud ramps. So Kyle, bullshit. 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 The Great Court is the largest single area of the complex. It was used once a year for an elaborate festival feast celebrating fertility. Fertility of the land, the people and the kingdom. Our minds have already been blown up by what we saw at the Karnak temples, and as we drive towards the Valley of the Kings, we stop at the site of what was once the memorial temple of Amenhotep III and the colossi of Memnon. Archaeological evidence confirms that this must have been one of the most awe-inspiring buildings in the ancient world, but has fallen in antiquity, with over 750 such statues once placed here, each one carved from one-piece blocks of orthoquatzite, one of the hardest stones known and extremely difficult to carve. I now begin to realise and faintly comprehend how advanced the ancient Egyptians actually were in every respect, and why Amenhotep III was probably ancient Egypt's greatest pharaoh, the epitome of everything that made ancient Egypt brilliant, presiding over the zenith of Egyptian culture and civilization, the Golden Age, the New Kingdom, 3,500 years ago.
So how many people are working to excavate then? Is it just a small team?
Small team.
Small team?
Yeah,
Very
small team. Not like yesterday.
The Valley of the Kings, an area of our world which has always been beyond my reach for one reason or another. is now beneath the soles of my all-terrain Crocs. There are several reasons why this area was chosen as a royal burial place, and one of them is the pyramid-shaped mountain known as the Horn. Only from the valley can one see the iconic shape, a form associated with solar deities who play so great a role in the iconography of royal tombs. The valley itself, originally named as the Great Noble Necropolis of millions of years of Pharaoh, the burial place of Egypt's New Kingdom rulers, is home to 62 tombs and 20 unfinished pits. The temperature on the day we visit forces the mercury to a staggering 53 degrees Celsius, hence the reason why the place is almost empty of tourists and why we are able to enter some of the fully excavated tombs unhindered by the usual masses which flock here during the high seasons of February, March, November and December. From the very first day of a king or queen's coronation, work would start on his or her tomb. The longer the reign, the deeper and more extravagant the resting place, for it has been confirmed that the religion of ancient Egypt was the first to believe in the life after death. We are all emotionally taken aback at the amount of work required to build and decorate these labyrinths of regal death, and discover that they were constructed by a surprisingly small group of workmen divided into two teams, a left gang and a right gang, of about 10 men each team, supervised by a foreman. Using simple metal chisels, wooden mallets and chert hand axes, they cut through the soft limestone bedrock at a fairly rapid rate. The men worked 8-hour days for 10 days, then enjoyed a 2-day weekend, followed by plasterers and scribes outlining the texts and scenes to be carved and painted. My 21-year-old son Kyle has finally, after almost his whole life reading through stories, watching the bad movies and even playing the video games, reached the most famous tomb of all, the final resting place of the boy pharaoh, Tutankhamun. Ironically, the teenage pharaoh's tomb is the smallest of them all, mainly due to his unexpected death only after 9 years on the metaphorical throne, and even if the work had even begun, the work was not far enough along for the tomb to be used. Artifacts and funeral objects were crammed into the tomb, suggesting a burial done in considerable haste. When Howard Carter first entered the best preserved pharaonic tomb ever found in the Valley of the Kings, himself and his financial backer, George Herbert, aka Lord Carnarvon, found more than 3,000 objects, many of them made from solid gold, and even today many of them remain unpublished. As we gaze upon the 3,000-year-old mummified body of the 18-year-old king, the reality of where we are sinks deep into our hearts. We have seen the king, Tutankhamun.
Boss.
One of the most memorable panoramas near the ancient city of Thebes is the approach to the memorial temple of Queen Hatshepsut, a dramatic expanse of rugged limestone cliffs that rises over 300 metres above the desert plain. They create a facade that captures the eye and holds it. Only slowly do we realise that at the base of the cliff stands a low, wide monument of even more breathtaking beauty, and together the mountain and the temple form a perfect marriage, each enhancing the other.
Here we are in front of the mosque. important place, holy of the holies, or sanctuary. Yeah. Was dedicated to sun god Amun-Ra. Queen Hatshepsut asked and she ordered her workers to dig tunnels to connect between her temple to her tomb. But the worker found hard stone in the middle and they conflicted with her idea. Queen Hatshepsut temple converted into church. On both sides of the walls we can see some cross and some Coptic or Christian graffiti too. Go ahead to see some of it. Thank you.
Is this supposed to be?
Okay, tell me.
Sacrifice table or ritual
Yes,
table?
that's right. Altar.
Yeah, an altar.
European visitors first saw Queen Hatshepsut's temple in a very ruined state at the end of the 18th century. Originally buried beneath tons of debris, it had undergone almost continuous excavation and restoration since the end of the 19th century, but it was not until the 1920s that enough clearing had been done so that visitors like ourselves could appreciate its magnificence. It has become one of the most visited and most admired monuments in Egypt. This particular area of Thebes holds the record as one of the hottest places on the planet. A temperature of 55 degrees Celsius was recorded just recently. We don't stay for long. Freaky hot.